welcome everybody to the Music in Widescreen podcast. I'm your host, Mark. I own progrock.com, Music in Widescreen. Been doing podcasts for 18 years now. I'm really excited to have Randy George here with us today from many things, but today we're talking about the Neal Morse Band. Randy, welcome to the show. Great to be
here. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. So would you mind giving us kind of an origin story of how you kind of got in, how you became this like bass player that's in demand almost everywhere? It seems like your background, your history of who you've worked with is quite long and impressive.
Well, sure. I was pretty much, at the tail end of the baby boomers, and I grew up like most American kids, right. And I started really listening to music in the late 60s.
Right.
And, when I was 9, 10, I used to I was going to be in a band. I wanted to be in a band, and it was all about music for me. I don't know why, it just was.
Right.
With me. So I was one of these kids who just really, really wanted to do that. I learned piano because there was piano in the house. So at 6, I was taking piano lessons. And I think when I was 12, I got my first bass and immediately started learning, Moody Blues and Yes, or trying to anyway. And it kind of started there. And yeah, so throughout the 70s, I played with some bands. We did a lot of the music, just the classic rock.
Mm-hmm.
I did that throughout the 70s and into the 80s for a while. And then about halfway through the 80s, I started focusing more on writing and composing. And, I got a cassette 4-track and, made a bunch of, silly demos. And some of those ended up on my second solo album, Action Reaction.
Okay.
Yeah. And, just as each stage, you sort of make an advancement of some sort. You get a piece of gear maybe that opens up a world for you. Like I got some keyboards and I got a guitar, electric guitar, and I started really just working on playing a little bit of everything and putting it together as a composition. So
I kind of think it sounds so easy though. It's like, oh, I bought this, so therefore I can play it.
Yeah, well, there's hours and hours of practice that go into the instrument. And, I was a kid that grew up in front of the TV, so naturally I ended up practicing in front of the TV. I actually learned a lot of background music, from some of the old shows.
Right.
Star Trek and whatnot, and learning riffs from that. And
okay.
It's interesting how that colors your perspective on things. You don't even realize it. Later on, all of a sudden you're thinking, why does that sound so much like the, 70s TV show music?
So were you actually watching people play like they do on YouTube now, or you were finding videos where they were playing it, or you were just mostly?
No, there was no such thing.
Well, yeah, but you might have like
I was learning
a TV show that you could.
All you had were records.
Yeah, so that's how you learned it, right?
And if you wanted to see it on the screen, you stayed up for the midnight special or Don Kirshner's rock concert. At least for where I lived, those were the two main shows. But that wasn't terribly helpful to anything because nothing that I actually learned was ever on any of those shows.
Right.
However, you really had to just rely on listening.
Yeah, so you could do it by ear.
And
yeah. So you mentioned Yes, and I think what was one of your first collaborations with John Anderson. John Anderson kind of put you on his label. Is that what I read? And you worked with him?
No, let's correct that.
Okay, good.
It's Rick Wakeman.
Rick Wakeman, thank you. I knew it was with Yes.
And this would be mid 90s, and this is after I first started to do recordings and write my own music.
Right.
And I met William Henderson, and the two of us sat down and wrote songs for a band called Agilon. And later, a drummer friend moved from Denver up to Seattle and joined us. And that was the band. We went into a local studio and recorded a cassette album. Well, an album. But what we did is we initially released 500 copies on cassette.
Okay, wow.
And we took one of those cassettes, sent it to Rick Wakeman, my partner, Will Henderson, at the time, he was the singer and songwriter of the group. And he had read in a magazine article about Rick Wakeman and his label, Hope Records, that he had just started.
Right.
And of course, just like, all good PR, Rick said, yeah, we're actively seeking talent from the label.
Oh.
Even though maybe it was a little premature on his end, but
Mm-hmm.
he heard our CD. I sent him the tape. I got a hold of his office and his personal assistant. So
Right.
she was helpful. And she made him listen to it like one day home before he left again on, for whatever. And she made him rifle through all the packages, find it, and listen to it.
Oh, geez.
And later he told me he listened to it 3 times in
wow.
3 different places to make sure that he wasn't just, make sure, he wanted to see if it hit him the same every time. And evidently it did. And he wanted to put the thing out, by the 3rd page of the letter, he sent a letter, but I also talked to him on the phone. Yeah. But, by the 3rd page of the letter, I fully expected him to just say, oh, thank you, but, maybe later,
Yeah, right.
I didn't expect.
Politely decline. Yeah.
Yeah, but by the third page of this letter, and finally, we'd like to change the cover and maybe change the title of the album to this song and yada yada yada, and it's like, well, okay. I went from fully prepared for rejection to like all of a sudden there's details of the release going on, and so it was really an exciting time for us,
right?
To have somebody from our favorite band take such an interest in what we were doing.
Right.
And he put it out, and I think they were very happy with the results, but it's a small pond in the UK at best. So the key was really getting it into the States, which happened on a couple different levels, but nothing that ever really went anywhere. And so I just rescued what was left, and we sold it through the website, and basically, put out another album, which Rick graciously played on for us.
That's wonderful.
Our second album.
So we're talking about On the Threshold of Eternity and This Good Place. Are those the 2 albums?
The first album was called Light at the End of the Tunnel.
Light at the End of the Tunnel. Okay.
The second album is On the Threshold of Eternity.
On the Threshold of Eternity. Okay.
This Good Place didn't come out for another 4, 5, 6 years later.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a 2009 release. Oh, yeah, Light at the End of the Tunnel. That's 96. So there was a 10-year gap between albums. Does that sound right?
Yeah, the band really, like I said, it was one of those bands where, as much as I wanted things to happen right away,
right,
you have to spend, you just have to work it as best you can around everybody and what they're willing to do. So,
and how did you end up connecting up with Neal?
Well, let's see. That was about 2003.
Yeah.
I, was very familiar with Transatlantic and Spockbeard. They quickly become some of my favorite albums. Mainly it was the first Transatlantic album because I remember, just prior to it being released, and I was really interested in hearing it. Right. And I sent Neal a CD with some demos on it that I had done over the years, and thinking maybe we could work together. And I never heard anything back from him, which isn't unusual for any reason.
Yeah,
it wasn't personal though.
Right.
You think, oh man, he didn't like it. You just don't realize where somebody else with their head is at when you send it to them. You just assume they're going to listen to it and love it.
Right. Right.
But yeah, nothing. I got nothing, man. Later on, a couple years later, he had left Transatlantic Spockbeard and went solo and worked on Testimony. Right. And after completing Testimony, he was trying to put together a touring band. And Testimony had not been released yet. So basically, I called him out of the blue. Just said, look, you got to, this is who I am. This is what we're doing. This is what we'd love for you to be part of, like I had him sing on that second Agilon album, On the Threshold of Eternity.
Right.
He's on the title track. So I wanted to do a vocal, see if he'd do it, because he was really sort of, in Christian prog, he was sort of a big thing at the time, that he was a Christian doing prog and yada, yada. We'd been doing that for a while. So we thought, oh, well, he'd be great as a guest. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was initially, I think, what I called him about.
Okay.
And then I had another little project I wanted to maybe put something on, like it was a series of what we called CPR, and we put out 4 volumes of that. And that's mainly compilation CDs of Christian progressive rock artists, sort of just to give the genre a face and a name, and somewhat of a catalog that there are out here who do this. And so I was trying to get him real interested in putting a song on that. And that was sort of a collaboration with other artists, although I was sort of the acting label to do it. Me and another guy, he handled the technical, more of the audio end of the things, and I handled all the cover and release. And so, I was really trying to get Neal into that, but he seemed real interested in doing the Agilon CD. What I think what happened then is during the conversation, it drifted to what he was doing about a touring band, and so that's really where it started. We began that conversation. I finally found out they needed a bass player, and they hadn't really found a bass player.
Right.
They were still looking, and I said, "Well, great, I'm the guy." So
Exactly.
he sent me a copy of Testimony, see if I liked it. I sent him a copy of the Agilon album we were working on. Said, here's some songs. Here's the one we'd like you to do. The typical music exchange and subsequent phone calls where you talk about it, and it's just, he's like, "You'd have to be out here," and I'm like, "Sure, I'll come out." So I drove out there so that I could be sort of flexible, and we did that first Testimony tour. He's making a joke, and he was, at the time when I showed up there, he had been put on voice rest, so he couldn't speak for a couple of weeks.
Right.
And he was walking around with a little whiteboard, writing stuff down.
Serious.
Really funny. It just seemed kind of strange because, you didn't show up expecting him to be like a mute. But I understood he had to do it because he had gone to a vocal coach who said, "Hey, you got some damage. You need to give your voice a couple of weeks to heal."
Right.
So no singing or talking for 2 weeks.
Wow.
And so that was right when I showed up. So we play through some of the material, and it's all good. And he just, as a joke, he writes on his whiteboard, "Got enough gas to get home." Built it up. And all the other guys are just like, "Oh!" I didn't, I guess for whatever reason, I didn't quite see it. So I was like, I missed the joke. I don't even know and then I found out what it was. And it's like, "Oh, okay, that's typical." But anyhow, there you go. That's how it happened. And then we just, I guess each time he started working on an album, the next time, at least the very next time he started working on one, I was out there while he was working on demos, and I worked on those with him, and even wrote a fair amount of lyrics on that album. And we recorded that album, and it just sort of became a yearly ritual with him and Mike and I. And we did Question Mark and the Sola Scriptura and Lifeline, cover to cover.
Right.
Then we Transatlantic got back together for the World one, and then Onward, Testimony, and Two, and Momentum, et cetera, et cetera. So.
Right. So it's been a long collaboration now. It's been pretty great to have you around. Now, the first time I think I saw you play was at the Cabaret at the Capitol in Quebec in May. It was May of 2013. What a great show you guys put on that night.
Thanks. Yeah, we love Canada.
Yeah, Canada loves you guys. That was a full show. It was just outstanding. I was really glad to see you play, I think, live for the first time. It was very memorable to us. We see a lot of shows, my wife and I, and that one really stood out as a great show. And it's like people always have trouble finding a bass player. I'm actually kind of surprised I didn't say they were really excited to get you, because you're kind of in the pocket with those guys, the same mind space, as well as a great bass player. So it seemed like it was like almost an accidental thing, but was it more, would they come after you a little bit harder than that or not?
Who? Neal Morse?
Neal Morse, yeah.
Well, he didn't know me when I first.
He didn't know yet. Okay, that's why.
Yeah, he had no clue who I was.
Okay.
All he knows is what I tell him. and all, and so naturally I'm like, well, I've got this band Agilon, Rick Wakeman signed us, so like that's supposed to be something, but it probably was to us. I think it probably at least made him feel like, well, it's worth checking out.
Right.
And of course, what he heard was all very nicely done. So I mean, he had no reason, to think other. But with Neal, I don't know. Neal's one of these guys. He knows what he's after, and he knows what's going on in the bass too. Like, if you're missing something or missing it, he may be missing a note or a little riff. He may be missing it. If it's not there, he'll know. And it's fun. Especially in like older Spock's music. He's very sensitive to what's going on in the bass. So I'm sure he was, he obviously needed to find somebody who could play like he does. So because he played bass on that first Testimony album himself.
Oh, right.
So he obviously needed somebody who could at least do what he was doing. But he didn't know if that was me until I got to the room.
Okay.
And we played through the opening to Testimony. That's right. Whatever happens right after Land of Beginning Again, it goes into that first overture.
Right.
And that was the first thing we played. And I just, I nailed it straight out because I'd had the first part of that whole album really well down.
Yeah.
Whole disc one, I had already had really well down. And I was sort of still dialing in disc two at that point. But I knew, so I knew enough of the, first part of the album that I pretty much, I had it down note for note, pretty well. So, so it went really well. I think they were pretty impressed that I pretty much just played it straight out and played exactly what should be there. And, I don't think at that point there was any more question, but, it's still a little weird, at first because, I'm sort of comfortable in a situation like that. Everybody, when they don't know you, they're not really sure what to think sometimes just because, there's that big unknown. This guy just drives out here from Seattle. He wants to play bass. Well, he killed, so he must be all right. I think everything went okay because I think everybody felt okay about it. Right. But as you can imagine, it took a little time to sort of, get everything to a point where like, okay, this is how it's going to be. And do all the testimony stuff. Once it was over, it was great. All great. And then the very next time he came after me for one. Hey, you want to come out? I got some dates I want to do, and I'm still working on demos for this new album, which was just out there. So I just happened to be there while he was finishing like guitar or something on the demos. He hadn't done vocals yet, and he gave me his little notebook, and there's gaping holes in all the lyrics, and so I started writing lyrics for it, filling in verses and lines, things that were where there were holes. I was just starting to just plug them, and so that's how we ended up
collaborating.
And then then he goes into doing the vocal demo. On the demos, mapping out all his vocals, and we're sitting there together, and we're able to talk through lyrics and put all that together while he was actually in the demo phase. So that was that sort of just gave us more of an in the studio working rapport. He already knew I could do it live, but he had never been in the studio with me, so he didn't know really much about how that would go. And of course, I wasn't really sure how it would be with Mike because I had never met Mike at that until
then
tour. I met Mike, and it was really cool. But I didn't know what it would be like in the studio. But it ended up being really cool. So everybody was, we just had a great work ethic, and we all sort of, approached doing what needed to be done. The process, we all were just sort of there and, ready to do it the way it needed to be done.
Right. And that's very apparent from seeing the show live, okay, everybody is, ready to go, well prepared, rehearsed, just tight, very tight. And I'm sure Neal is a bit, I'm sure Neal is, I don't know, maybe on this close to a perfectionist, a type of guy that makes sure that, that everybody, if there's something wrong, he'll address it and you guys will get it done. Right.
Yeah. It always does. It always happens.
Right.
Always happens.
Right. And so now I actually, because when you're talking about how collaborative it is, you're in there, you're already getting like lyrical credits, right away. Is Did that actually have anything to do with changing the name? We should talk a little bit about that, from the Neal Morse Band to NMB. Did he want to take a little focus away from himself and maybe share the stage a little bit more, or is there something else there with that name change? Do you know?
Yeah, well, yeah. When okay, basically everything we've been just talking about
Hmm.
is really started in 2003 and kind of continued the same way up
Right.
till about 2012.
Hmm.
When and much of this was driven by Mike and his touring schedule, because he was still with Dream Theater most of that time.
Right.
Then he was with Avenged Sevenfold,
Right.
and it just became clear that Neal was going to want to do dates, and Mike just wasn't going to be available. Inevitably, that was going to happen.
Right.
And so I think Neal wanted to find somebody that he could sub, for Mike.
Hmm.
And we just decided, because after Testimony and Testimony 2, where it was all about, well, who are we going to get, and finding people to do it. And everybody's got a ton of work to do. Some guys are reading the stuff off paper because that's the only way they can do it.
Right.
Which is fair enough, and I understand that, but it's not really a band thing. It's more like a symphony thing or something.
Right.
I guess we could get away with that, and it wasn't that big a deal. But I think Neal just realized we just need a lean, mean prog machine.
Right.
The same guys, and I think we, because at that point he had been working with Flying Colors, and Transatlantic had gotten back together for a couple more.
Right.
It was one of those things where he began to really see the value of having all the guys in the room to collaborate,
Hmm.
and just having the same guys in the band.
Right.
And so in 2012 we held those open auditions, and we got Bill and Eric off of the open auditions on
Nice.
YouTube. And so after that, and we had Adson from South America initially in that, but due to visa issues, there was just no way he was going to be able to continue. So it became the 5-piece band that we are. And of course, at that point, it made sense to call it the Neal Morse Band. We talked to Thomas about it at Inside Out, and Thomas Vauber, he was recommending just stick with your name. You're established.
Right.
Neal Morse Band, and that covers the band thing. And that was probably okay at first. We did the first album. It was an experiment, the Grand Experiment.
Right.
And it was an experiment because I think Neal wanted to see what would happen if he didn't come in with any material written. And
Okay.
we didn't. And so pretty much, we wrote in the room, wrote on the spot, worked with some demos that some of us had. And we all had bits and pieces that played into it.
Hmm.
And it became a truly collaborative album.
Right.
Then we did Similitude and Great Adventure, and those turned out to be doubles. And
As they do.
Get a really good working rapport with all 5 of us working through those albums and those songs. Neal was mapping out a lot of it in the after hours, or for him it was before hours. He'd be up at 5 in the morning in there, working on songs. Right. And we'd get there and he'd show us what he'd been working on, and then Mike would get there and we'd start to build it. And so we just, over the 3 albums we've done, it just became very collaborative. Right. Innocence and Danger, again, Neal came in with nothing. We knew we just wanted to do songs. It wasn't going to be a concept album.
Right.
We sort of came in with none of that decided.
Right.
And just wrote in the room. But in many cases, I think the problem is it still sounds like a solo artist with a band.
Right.
It came off that way.
Right.
And and that's what it was most of the time, until this started the last few albums.
Right.
It just started to become, okay, this is more of a band environment, a band process, and basically an even split band where everybody's got input, and everybody's equally important. And
right.
So we thought the best way to, and for years people on social networking would refer to us as NMB. just like typical internet protocol.
Right.
Find
Right.
some kind of initial or buzzword for something, and that's what it means. And NMB became that for us.
Great.
And so we thought, well, let's just go with that. Let's use that as a way to rebrand it, so that is not the Neal Morse Band anymore so much as that it's NMB. It still stands for the Neal Morse Band, but it sounds more like NMB. It sounds a little hip hop maybe, but
yeah, yeah, like Notorious NMB could have been. No, I think it makes sense, to do that. You guys are all putting in the time, and there's certainly, you guys are all, just the top cream of the crop musicians. And speaking of that, the press release said about how I think Eric's vocals are just going to another level, and I have to agree with that. I think the first track.
What's going on over there? I don't know. Maybe something in the tornadoes dropped or the water pit.
I don't know, because the Do It All Again is unbelievable. I mean, it's
that's what he did on the album, but if you've been watching, he puts out a bunch of covers and does stuff just out of his studio, and it's really quite amazing. He did Dream On, and it was just insane.
Right.
Vocally. I mean, he's just really, I don't know, he's just really coming into his own as a singer, I think, and he's got so much talent oozing on all levels.
Right. I had to look. I almost thought it was a guest singer. That's how ignorant I am. But I was like, because it almost sounded like the guy from Mystery, Gene, and I'm like, wow, no, it's not. So great, really amazing job. I do want to mention that this is you touched on it briefly. So you stepped away from the concept album. You guys came in there with basically nothing, and you built it up to where it stands right now, right?
Yeah, it really, that's how it started. We had some bits and pieces.
Yeah, bits and pieces.
I think Bill and I had talked early on, and it was like, I'm going to bring in a bunch of demos that are all finished and, processed out.
Right.
Because it doesn't do any good anyway, because it still gets changed.
Right.
It's easier maybe to just bring in some core ideas that we can take and build, rather than taking them and building them first. Just bring the raw material in and let the band take it and run with it.
Right.
And pretty much, oddly enough, we used quite a bit of that, but I also ended up playing some of the demos that I had fleshed out, and we took some stuff from that too. Bill had probably half of the epic, the 30-minute epic. He probably had half of that demoed up pretty well, but it was really, really good. So we worked around some of that.
Right.
But like Not Afraid, was it written entirely during that week, and there was none of that existed. Well, one of the bits in it is from one of the raw ideas I brought in, but really most of that song, I guess you haven't heard it yet, so you wouldn't know.
I actually have. They did. They sent it to me yesterday, so I could prepare for this interview.
Yeah, in any case, that was something, Neal had been working on like at 5 a.m. and sat there and came up with this idea, and then, saved it for a couple of days later, but he'd been working on it. And then, once we got there and we were working on that song, he pulled out what he had done, and then we just started really writing in the room with a lot of it.
Right.
So, a lot of collaboration. But, it was one of those things where we wrote our way to almost like 90 minutes of music.
Right.
And so we're looking at it thinking, well, no, we didn't want to leave anything out. We didn't want to put songs on a bonus disc. We didn't want bonus tracks.
Right.
We felt most of the tracks, they all deserved to be album tracks, not really just bonus material.
Right.
Although the bonus material would have included some covers. So, there's all that.
Right.
And basically, at that point, it was like, well, we only really need a couple more things to make a double album.
Right.
So what happened that day, and this was the day after I left, is they sat down and came up with a cover of Bridge Over Troubled Waters.
Right.
And Neal and Bill sort of mapped out that, and then they got drums to it, and then we basically built it later, in our own studios, which is how we do the whole album. We leave scratch tracks. Every album we build in the studio has everybody sort of just scratching out their track.
Right.
Mike back and tracks final drums to all of that, and then we go home and each rebuild our own world.
Right.
So yeah, they did this Bridge Over Troubled Waters, but there still wasn't enough material.
Right.
And Bill had remembered The Way It Had to Be, which was one of the original songs we wrote for the Great Adventure.
Okay.
We started writing for that in August of 2017, and we put together 5 tracks. It was one of the 5 tracks. The other 4 tracks I think got used. For some reason, we forgot to burn a copy of it when we left, and so it never really got used. But Bill remembered it, and so we pulled it out, and they just sort of worked through it and got drums from Mike.
Right.
And we took it home and built that out too. So in a way, that was a leftover song.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a leftover song because we didn't like it or because it wasn't very good.
Right.
It just sort of got overlooked and lost in the shuffle. And it was something we really liked at the time.
Right.
But you know how things go.
Oh yeah. Well, especially with the bands that I love, such as you guys. I mean, you guys always have stuff you're writing constantly, right? You got 4 or 5 people writing constantly. Stuff's always going to be in some form or another, that you can bring to the table at different stages. So that doesn't surprise me at all that you had that in the bank. And of course, you just couldn't help but put out a double disc. You end up with a 19-minute version of Not Afraid, and Beyond the Years chimes in at 30 minutes plus. So that's pretty amazing amount of music there for everybody, for the fans.
And we actually put it all together in
Right.
like 12 days, something like that.
Gosh, it's amazing. And I just want to let people know that it's available as a 2 CD plus DVD digipack, and standard 2 CD jewel case, or a 3 LP plus 2 CD box set, and a digital album as well. So there's so many ways to get this thing. Do you happen to know, I always hesitate to ask this of the members because they're not always in the loop on this. I assume the 3 LP and a 2 CD box set is it's like you have the CD to rip and you also have the vinyl. They're identical. Do you happen to know that?
Well, the layout of the songs on the vinyl is
different
because we're limited on vinyl.
Yeah, 23 minutes.
CDs will be laid out just like any other package as far as the two discs. It's just like the last time. The Great Adventure was the same thing. Similitude of a Dream was the same thing. Nice. These packages are typically, there's discussions always going on with the record label.
Right.
Fans and the record label. Well, the fans want this. Fans griped about this. Fans would like to see this. And the record label's like, well, we tried that, and we tried this, and we did that.
Right.
And there was no way to really just please everybody.
Right.
So it's like people say, well, why don't they do this? It's like, well, you know what? They did that with somebody's release. Maybe not ours, but they did that with somebody's release. Mm-hmm. So maybe they didn't feel that it did well enough to keep doing it in that format.
Right.
I don't know. But they make those decisions.
Yeah.
We sign off on them.
Right.
But, it's not like we sit around trying to come up with these, how are we going to package it? We don't really,
for sure.
We're not really that involved in that. Usually it just gets run by us what they want to do. And Mike basically puts his input on what he thinks, like, well, if you're going to do that, make sure you do this, or,
Right. That's why I sometimes don't even ask the question, because the artists, they don't know. It's really the label that makes that call.
Oh yeah, I don't know until I get two giant boxes from UPS, and I open them up, and every kind of vinyl and every version of the CD and copies. So it's like this is great, but whatever.
Right.
I feel for people who don't have exactly what they want in any one of the formats, and it makes sense to me. I see why they would be upset, maybe. But at the same time, I don't know, there's got to be a way, there's got to be a way just to get everything you want even if it doesn't come in one physical package.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, you can't. You can't please everybody on that. I'll tell you. Like I said, you have a great selection here. Like I said, you got a CD and DVD. And the DVD I wanted to mention, it's got an hour-long making of, which is nice. You let everybody into your home, I believe, with a studio tour as well. Right? And
yeah, well, we all have that. I ask everybody to shoot footage
right.
of stuff. I thought, it'd be nice to have just some extras on the disc.
Yeah, that's awesome. And
Eric already did it just naturally. It's like, well, we could put studio to it. I'll just do one, and then we'll have us.
Right. So I mean, you can get this on everything: CD, DVD, downloadable, vinyl. And the vinyl comes with the CD as well, in case some people like to display their vinyl only and have the CD to play and rip. So that's a great combination there. And I think I think we'll probably leave it there. I want to thank you for spending some time with me. I really appreciate it. I almost kind of starstruck because I've seen your performances are so tight. And I just want to let people know that the release date is August 27th. It's on Inside Out, of course. You can see more at nealmorse.com or radiantrecords.com or nealmorsefans.com. There's plenty of places to get a hold of this album and pre-order it and get it. And anything else that I should mention before I let you go?
No, we got the tour coming up here.
Okay.
October. There's Morse Fest on
right on
8th and 9th.
It's a weekend. It's a weekend that some people may have off. It's Columbus Day weekend, so don't miss that.
Yeah, and then really, Morse Fest, the Friday, Saturday, Sunday kind of thing, and then Monday we head to Seattle for the first show on Tuesday, and then back to Chicago where we catch a bus, and we have 8 more shows on the East Coast, Midwest and East Coast. And so that's in October, and we'll be in Europe next spring, starting around May 24th or thereabouts, May 23rd, something like that, into about June 15th. So there's a number of European dates.
Do you know what countries you're hitting there? I'm giving you kind of this memory test I didn't mean to do for you, but do you know like what countries you'll be in?
Oh, sure. There's Spain, Madrid, Barcelona, and then into Milan, which is Italy, to the Z7, which is just outside Zurich.
Okay.
Then I think from there we're over to Tilburg in Holland.
Oh yeah, Tilburg. Are you going to play the what is it? I've been there. The O2. What is that called?
Yes, that's right. The O2. No, it's not the O2.
It's not the O2. It's something like that though. It's the O5.
O5.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm blanking on that. Yeah, something like that. But it's
right in the middle of Tilburg. I mean, it's huge. There's like 3,000 people that play there, or can attend those shows.
Anyway, yeah. So there's that, and Paris, the UK. Then we have a couple shows in Germany and Poland.
Oh yeah, Luxembourg. I'm pulling it up now. Czech Republic.
I should be looking at it, and I'm not. But
I just found it. I didn't.
You said from memory, so I'm trying to do this for you from memory. So
that's pretty good.
Yeah, then we got what did we come out of? We got Warsaw, Krakow, if I'm not mistaken.
That's yeah. Yep.
We have Estonia. I don't know if that show stuck or not, but we probably not. Probably we'll go to. We got Oslo, Gothenburg, and Stockholm is where it ends.
Yeah, Copenhagen. So if you don't see this, it's on you because they are putting themselves out there. It's going to be great. We'll see the Chicago show, I'm sure. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me.
Sure.
Good luck on the tour. I'm sure you don't need it, and I'm sure the album will do well as well. And let's just hope for the best and everything.
Sounds good.
All righty. Well, be safe out there. And have a great tour and a great album sales. Okay.
Great. Thanks.